Hello everyone, I am Sunflower, and if you're unfamiliar with my channel or need a quick refresher, I like to make videos on horror related topics, with analog horror being a big part of that since the middle of 2023. Talking about it and making videos covering the genre has been great and one hell of a ride. Hey, what can I say? I've thoroughly enjoyed talking about what I like, and it looks like a lot of you have enjoyed what this subgenre of horror has to offer and what my and many other commentary on it offers as well. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that I have my issues with the genre. If you couldn't tell, I've been steering away a bit from analog horror as a whole. The genre just doesn't feel the same anymore, like it's been milked for all it has, or that it's on life support or its final legs, whatever you want to call it. And I've been thinking about this for a while now. I think there's a lot we can point to that's caused this, but it's not all doom and gloom. I'm sure you've all noticed this, and that's what I aim to get across to you in this video with the help of some special guests too. These are AZUNStudios, BDstudios, and Aavarion, who are analog horror YouTubers you may have heard of or even seen their videos. They'll chime in with their takes and opinions, and I'll have their relevant links in the description for you to check out. Now, with all of that being said, let's dive into it. We can't start anywhere without looking at the tropes of analog horror. We can look to videos from things such as No Through Road and Marble Hornets, which has sort of been credited for establishing the found footage / VHS look analog horror has. And if we're pointing all of this out, we can't forget the Blair Witch Project. But the tropes I really want to hone in on and talk about are the ones established by Local 58, created by Chris Straw, because these have been done to death. But at the time, they were fresh, new, and that tagline, analog horror at 476 MHz, was truly the birth of the genre in name. What we see in this series is simple yet effective and stands as key tropes still utilized to this very day. We have the grainy VHS look and sounds, the simple graphics on screen, and text on screen here and there. No jump scares either, just a lot of build up. This has spawned countless, and I mean countless, incredible series like The Mandela Catalog, Gemini Home Entertainment, The Walton Files, Vita Carnus, The Man in the Suit, Basewood County, Prehistoric Emergence, Celestial Entropy, Needle Mouse, The Painter, Petscop, The Aavarion Show, The Macabre Experiment, FNAF VHS, The Grizz Tapes, SM64 Classified, The Black Sun Tapes, Power Star Archives, TMK, The Moon Woke Up, The Boiled One & Co., Dog Nightmares, Fairy Tale Analog Horror, The Backrooms, and many, many more. All of these utilize the tropes of the genre to tell their stories in a digestible video format, all accessible via YouTube. Obviously, everyone has their opinions, likes and dislikes when it comes to these. Regardless of that, these are held in high regard. The genre has evolved over time too, and a lot of YouTubers have pushed the boundaries and expanded upon what an analog horror can be. This has been done in some good and incredible ways, and also in some bad ones. The way I see it, the good and bad go hand in hand, since in analog horror's case, you can have too much of a good thing. What was once good and innovative has been used to churn out loads of low-effort videos, countless low-effort videos, and what you would dub as slop. The biggest culprits of these are the EAS scenario videos. Emergency alert systems are national warning systems of the US designed to alert or warn the public of something, or in analog horror's case, to alert the public of their impending doom. What was once an innovation in the genre that was great at telling short, bite-sized stories and spooks has now given way to flat and mundane storytelling that leaves you feeling very meh. The clips I'll be throwing up on screen to show this won't have the usual crediting I give, because I don't want to point at and shame these YouTubers and the videos they've made. I want to use their videos to highlight this issue and more. So, with more and more people dipping their toes in the analog horror sphere, more videos were naturally produced. So what was once a genre with hit after hit slowly started to see some lower quality videos, which is fine, right? If you don't have the technical skills, then you have to start somewhere and learn. I mean, just look at my first few videos on YouTube, holy moly.
So I'm pretty sure you should know where Europe is, and where America is, because if you don't, you have balls stuck in your head. I swear to God.
Anyway, copying and pasting the EAS formula and using it as a foundation and not building upon it has been a kind of plague that's spread across the analog horror genre. I mean, you really don't have to look hard to find video after video showing this. Some of them even step away from the analog horror visuals we all know. So my immersion? Ruined. To really make something in this genre, it takes time and a lot of care to mimic old media and create horror that doesn't rely on jump scares, but on slow build-ups and curated mysteries and payoffs. So even if you find a genuinely good short one-off EAS scenario video and you like it, can you see where the slippery slope would be? Can you see how the snowball would start rolling? And how simply copying the foundation of the genre may not be enough for so many videos? So despite there being some good EAS scenario videos out there, what's the problem with that? It's the ease of production that can come about, especially with this format of video. That and more has caused oversaturation. We've come to a point where there's just too many analog horror videos. And now you might hear that and think, well, that's good, is it not? But not in this case. Ideas are recycled over and over again, like narrative plots, monsters, etc. Not even ones inspired by an IP is safe, as they present the same issue as copying and pasting the EAS format. A lot of it feels like there's foundation but no structure built upon it. Or like dipping your toes into a pool but not diving in. That sounds very surface level and not full of depth, right? Is this just what happens when something slowly becomes mainstream? It starts off niche with a dedicated fan base, time and care is put into it, other people who are less invested join in, and then the quality of the product worsens over time as it becomes skewed and changes to accommodate the less invested people who are slowly becoming the majority. Does that sound about right? Pumping out videos by putting in the least amount of effort for efficiency is continuously growing too, although this seems like something we only really see from videos that rely heavily on AI generated scripts, images, etc. This and other factors can also lead people to make low effort videos for the sake of monetary gains as well, and we all know how that can go in any industry or field. Making money is not the problem here, but there is a slippery slope to consider. So where has all of this led us over 10 or so years? Fucking analog horror funk. That's where we are for analog horror right now. This is fucking stupid, okay? What makes someone look at something with a purposeful build-up of horror crafted perfectly by imitating found footage and old analog media and thinks, yeah, it needs a funk edit? This is blasphemy, I tell you. It goes against everything that is analog horror, or even horror in general. Could you imagine finding a tape or a CD that has a one-word phrase on it, playing it to see what it is, only to find this? All it does is make you laugh at the ridiculousness of it all, and that's where we are right now. I don't know if you've watched my recent analog horror videos, but man, do I laugh a lot about what's happening on screen. My analog horror videos used to be so serious, and it's hard to be throughout the whole video if I'm choosing to cover something like this. And yeah, I get it, you can all point to me and say, I don't have to cover these, but there's not too much really going on in the analog horror sphere. So have I just joined in on the clown show? After all, I did make a video on analog horror entities you could definitely breed, and I do plan on making another one of those. I have made other humorous or action-oriented analog horror videos as well. Am I truly part of the problem? Or am I simply adapting to the circumstances and the cards we've been given? Can we say the same for other people who make these unserious or low-effort analog horror videos too? After all, some of them really do rack up a lot of views. And that brings me to my next point in one way or another. If it exists, there's analog horror of it. This is a slogan I've used to describe the state of analog horror because I think it does it so well. It takes everything we've discussed already and more and explains it in one sentence. The overuse of tropes with no real substance, the reliance on existing IPs, the oversaturation of videos, and the lack of time and care for one's craft has led analog horror to the state that it's in now. Again, these things aren't exclusively bad per se, but the way they can be used has led us to here. I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at people about it, but I think it's necessary to point out these factors. One big point to mention are the tools people use to make videos in general. As time goes on, video editing is becoming more and more accessible. People can now edit videos on their phones, built-in tools and filters are making things easier to create as well. That means the barrier to entry keeps getting lower and lower, and anyone can just come in without a full comprehension of video editing, and in this case analog horror, and make what they want. This all has led to analog horror being anything at this point. This also ties in with the previous point of immersion. I do not feel immersed when watching a lot of these now. Do you? Look at it! Do you? That's just how it goes for genres. Once a genre is established, yeah, boundaries are going to be pushed, but it cannot just be anything. That's the whole point of a genre, it's something specific, not everything. Like, why would the 6-7 kid of all things, or anything modern, be an analog horror? It's anachronism at its finest, which is something belonging or appropriate to a period other than that in which it exists or is portrayed. An example would be if somebody dressed up as a historical figure from the 1800s, but they have a modern zoomer haircut or they're wearing a digital watch. In analog horror's case, analog media and a subject within it from the modern era like My Name Jeff or Fonk. It's immersion breaking and breaks from the genre itself, so much so that the analog horror label doesn't even work anymore for it, yet it's still called that. Some of it can also just straight up take the horror, thriller themes and suspense out of it and replace it with something unbefitting to the genre. I have heard the argument before that because of the internet, being genuine is becoming more seen as cringe or something to steer away from, and I think this could be an example of that. Taking something that was once held to a higher regard and more serious as an art form and degrading it because lol XD, what if Thanos' car busted up the Avengers? Ha ha ha, for real, for real. What the hell did I just say? This really shouldn't be categorized as analog horror, but as an analog edit instead or something? Where's the horror? It's so unserious. That brings me to another question I have. What can be done? Just like with a lot of things, if you don't give it attention, it'll go away. Your time is precious after all, and everything around you is fighting for it. I used to argue not to judge a book by its cover, but doing this judging can help you with picking and choosing what you spend your time consuming. Sometimes you don't need to watch, play, or do something to know you're not gonna like it or that it might be bad for you. You don't have to overthink or give everything a chance. That would be impossible. That sounds a bit intense for something like analog horror, but in regards to that, you can save your time for the videos that matter most to you. In doing so, you could support the videos and YouTubers you really enjoy in the analog horror space by watching them, interacting with their videos and communities, or even monetarily supporting them. Like I said, some of this sounds pretty intense for something like analog horror, but degradation of the arts is a pretty serious issue, and it goes far beyond this. But in contrast, there's also a fine line to take when critiquing something you don't like. I shouldn't tell you to not watch low-effort analog horror, or even tell you to watch people's coverage of it instead. That's one hell of a slippery slope, but prioritizing the people who are putting in the effort and not slop is a recommendation I can get around. Objectivity and subjectivity obviously play a huge role in what people watch, but consuming and being content with products that get worse and worse just breeds more of that. Shouldn't the better stuff be rewarded? That's what I personally want my analog horror videos to focus more on too. I don't mind being a bit humorous with the genre, maybe something more action focused as well, but the focus should be more on the horror crafted by great visuals, sounds, and an interesting story, should it not? I brought them up in the intro, but I wanted to ask a few analog horror YouTubers that I'm friends with about their opinions on the matter. Two of them make great analog horror videos, and the other makes informative videos on the genre. These are AZUNStudios, BD Studios, and Aavarion. Azun, the mind behind Prehistoric Emergence, and recently had a whole film theory video about his series, which is so cool, has been on the channel before in my Kiryu vs Analog Horror video. I've had BD he jump in a few times in some other videos too, and I've been on his channel a few times as well. Aavarion is the YouTuber behind the Aavarion show Analog Horror, and he's had some recognizable names like Dark Mind, Two Idiot Germans, Leon Vincible, and more work on his series. These are some seriously creative people, so let's see what they have to say.
Hey everyone, AZUN here. I'm the creator of Prehistoric Emergence, a series that asks the question, what would happen to the modern world if prehistoric creatures re-emerged? It dives a little bit into prehistoric encounters through found footage, and it also covers how they would affect our ecosystems and our politics, and dabbles a little bit into mythology, but I don't want to spoil too much about that. If you haven't checked it out, I'm biased, but you totally should check it out. I highly recommend it. So anyways, it's inspired by several medias like Subnautica and Meg, which, makes sense, but also a little bit of God of War. The most prominent I'm pulling from right now is District 9. So I went with Analog Horror because the format allows for very untraditional storytelling. Analog Horror can world build in ways most Hollywood movies never can. There were no rules to how you had to make an analog horror video. This format to me felt very freeing and refreshing, but in that same freedom, formula was born. As you can see now, people are seeing what works and they're copying it. And most of the genre is starting to feel like a Xerox of a Xerox. Back in the day, analog horror to me felt like the fine dining experience, and now it's become more of the McDonald's of horror content. Funny enough, I'm definitely guilty of this. If you look back at the earlier episodes of my own series, it definitely includes every trope, analog horror trope known to man. A VHS glitches, jump scare, creepy text, you name it. And I'd like to think now I found a much better balance, something that still keeps the analog horror flavor that we all enjoy and includes some new elements you wouldn't see as much in analog horror. And there really is no secret formula. I've come to learn that at your start, it's okay to make something unoriginal or what others would call slop. It's not a sin, but there is a difference between someone actively working to grow and elevate their content and someone who's comfortable copying others. And all I could tell you is I think we will see some of these creators, even of, series that maybe were featured in this video as being unoriginal slop, start to grow. We've already seen it actually. I mean, if you think about some of the greats of analog horror like Vita Carnis, you could compare its start to how it's going now. There's a drastic difference in production. I lied. If there is a secret sauce, it's just constantly trying to put out videos, but also actively learning and reflecting on them. So I don't think there's anything wrong with some analog horror videos being repetitive and slop. I really hope these creators will grow and elevate their content, and I'm excited to see the future of analog horror. And I'm grateful anyone showed my series support in the early days. So if any of you guys are watching, thank you so much. And thank you, Sunflower, again for having me on. This was awesome.
Hello everyone. This is AZUNStudios, and I make deep dive videos on quality analog horror series, as well as videos talking about the genre as a whole and the wonderful community I am presently in. Analog horror has been such an integral part of my channel, with it mainly being created for the love of the genre. The medium of analog horror is in such a unique position where it is overwhelmingly accessible. It's a medium that on the good end can push unique ideas and visuals with formats that add to the series, with most series not being able to tell its story without its unique format. But on the other end, which is way more in abundance, it's creation just for the sake of popularity and views, not because it adds to the story. This kind of stuff is everywhere in the genre of analog horror. Creation for popularity was explained earlier in the video through the if it exists, there's analog horror about it. With so much analog horror being classified as popular IP with one spooky image and black background on white text, this is as unappealing and lazy as a story gets. It only exists for the shock value of using popular IP, which people know will get clicks, which is the same type of deal as people who create analog horror for views and money. With these specific reasons, analog horror has become more of a slop fest than it was at its inception. A lot of it is just a huge pump and dump of crap using AI to accelerate the process. These series put the genre in a bad light as a whole, as so much is just being crapped out, which really sucks because there are a lot of really good analog horror series that push the genre further upwards and tell a great story. It reminds me a lot of learning about the video game crash of 1983. With the rise of the Atari, many amateur game studios came with games, mainly relying on popular IP to get sales. Sound familiar? So what happened? With so many awful games flooding store shelves, the game market crashed. But from there, it rebuilt itself, with many companies realizing how bad it had gotten. In the early 1980s, they made their own brands to ensure quality. They were the ones that got supported. I think this is where the community where analog horror is headed, with people realizing that there is more to the genre than just cheap IP stealing laziness, and where we need to support only great projects with real passion and a real story to ensure that these get the attention they deserve.
Hi there, my name is Mason, and I'm the lead director of the multimedia horror series, The Aavarion Show. Our series blends elements of analog horror, found footage, animation, and ARG storytelling into one larger and connected narrative built from a story that took 2 to 3 years to fully write out. What inspired me to create The Aavarion Show was my longtime love for authors and directors like David Lynch and Clive Barker. Early in the writing process, I had the idea of creating an analog horror series that felt like a collision of both of their creative minds in one production. And that's when it was just me with an old camera. Now, I can officially say that I have a full team of over 15 writers, artists, and creators across the interwebs who have helped shape the project into what it is today and what it's slowly becoming. The story is a unique twist on the late-night talk show format, but set within a cryptic and dystopian setting, with multiple narrative threads branching out and connecting back to the same larger story. This also goes without saying that we really wanted to bring something original and unique to the AH community. I'm a longtime fan of Gemini Home Entertainment myself. What I personally love most about analog horror is how it gives independent creators the space to fully show off their skills and tell bold, unsettling stories in ways that larger studios often miss. It's a format that thrives on creativity, atmosphere, and raw ideas, and because of that, it can tackle horror in a way that feels far more personal and disturbing. We've done everything we can to make the Aavarion Show stand out. But even so, I can honestly say that the journey has already been worth it. Getting the opportunity to hire on and work with major voice actors from Glitch Productions, Mob Entertainment, the Nerdcore community, and some incredibly talented YouTubers in their own spaces has been an unreal experience. Now, do I think the analog horror genre has degraded over the years? My honest answer? Yes. And no. On one hand, there's definitely been some dilution. An infectious wave of AI-generated analog horror slop has flooded the space and, in a lot of ways, given the genre a worse reputation than it deserves. You also see a lot of inconsistent projects that build up passionate fan bases only for the creators to lose steam trying to chase the next big thing, as they end up quitting when it doesn't make the cut, which leaves people with unfinished stories and no payoff. And then of course there's the repetitive nature of analog horror, where some creators lean too hard on the same gimmicks, scary face jump scares, distorted audio, and creepy images, with no real story underneath it. But on the other hand, in my honest opinion, the genre is still breathing. You just have to know where to look. There are still plenty of incredible series out there that are just waiting to grow even bigger. Creators are still pushing the format in smart, unsettling, and unique ways. Series and creators like AZUNStudios, who conveniently is in the same video as us, Midwest Angelica, Genesis Index, Obelisk, Basswood County, and the newly released Glendale Archives, which feels like a liminal space survivalist cooking simulator in the best way possible, are all proof that analog horror is doing big things behind the trees. My closing advice is this: if you're trying to make a horror internet series, only play it safe when you need to. Don't settle for the easiest version of an idea just because it's quicker to make or feels familiar. Turn something that was already made into something crazier, and make something that actually feels like you. Commit fully, and bring something genuinely fresh to the table even if you don't make a huge impact to the community. I think analog horror right now is kind of like a small campfire in the middle of a huge snowstorm, with a bunch of creators gathered around trying to stay warm. It's still alive, still burning, but it needs people willing to throw bigger, crazier, more ambitious ideas in the pile, or even then trying to seriously revive the scariness that was in the original concept of analog horror. The more creators push the genre forward instead of diluting it, the bigger that fire gets, and the more it lights the way for everyone else.
Well, there you go. Thanks for joining me, guys, and giving your insights. Your perspectives and opinions are what breathe life into analog horror and the community. It's safe to say that some or a lot of these thoughts and opinions are shared not just between us, but by many other people. Many people who still enjoy what the genre has to offer and love creating videos for it, even if things aren't ideal in it right now. And like I said in the intro, I'll have AZUN's, BD's, and Aavarion's relevant videos and channels linked in the description if you want to check all of that out too. You won't be disappointed. So, where does that leave us? Well, it really does feel like analog horror is sitting in a limbo of sorts. Is it dying or on life support? I definitely think it's on life support, but I know things can change. However, as stated before, a rise and fall is a good way of looking at it, but that doesn't mean that it can't rise again. At the moment, it does feel like looking for a diamond in the rough when trying to find something new to watch, but thanks to all of you, I've written up a small list of things to watch. So much so that the ones I like, I cover in videos and want to cover in future videos. If you have any suggestions for myself or people watching this video, feel free to leave that suggestion down in the comments section and we can hopefully spread around great analog horror videos. I'll give a few suggestions of my own. Prehistoric Emergence, The Aavarion Show, no bias whatsoever, Shin Sonic, and Dog Nightmares. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't, so why not help each other out with suggestions? Even collaborating or creating communities for analog horror is a great idea, especially that collaboration part. I don't think we have too much of that going on. Regardless, people are still making great analog horror videos and plenty more will continue to do so. You just might have to find them in a sea of other stuff. And that's been the video. Thanks for watching. What did you think of it? Have you got opinions on what was said and shown in the video? If so, let me and everyone else know in the comments section down below. I've got more analog horror videos, other horror videos, and some other stuff coming out in the near future. So like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and check out my other links in the description. And as always, we can't forget the shout out to my lovely patrons and YouTube members. And a big shout out to the highest tier Patreon member, Joel Matthew Colgrove. Shout outs to our highest tier YouTube members too, Cherry XP and Hammer Brother 13. Thank you all for your continued contributions and thank you to everyone else too. You guys are absolute legends. Stay tuned for more videos like this. Relevant links to everyone else that joined me in this video will be in the description for you to check out, and I'll catch ya in the next one.